Greetings, watch lovers, and welcome to Watches in the Wild. Today we'll take a look at the watch genre receiving little to no attention. Let's be honest, we all suffer from an overdose of dive watch content. We are drowning in a flood of submariners and submariner lookalikes. Let us just for a moment do away with the wetsuit and diving mask and take to the skies. While we stroll through Zurich Airport in Switzerland, let me present to you a pilot's watch, or as we say in German, a Fliegeruhr. Why opt for a pilot's watch in the first place? As is so often the case, it's less about the utility of the watch, being able in this case to precisely measure a time interval, and more about its evocative nature. It's about the emotions it manages to create in us. A pilot's watch is utterly useless nowadays, but importantly, was all but useless in the past. The predecessors of this chronograph were relied upon, were mission critical for dozens and hundreds of military pilots. Let's take this watch's great-grandfather, the so-called B-Uhr, short for Beobachtungsuhr in German. Starting in the 1940s, this watch was used not by pilots, but by navigation personnel to calculate the plane's exact position. It is said that up to 90% of bombs missed their targets in the beginnings of World War II. By the way, the man in the cockpit often wore a chronograph as a backup, just in case that monstrous B-Uhr measuring 55 millimeters in diameter would all of a sudden refuse doing its job. The emotional appeal of this IWC only increases when you consider its origins. The Swiss-German watch manufacturer didn't come up with its pilot's watches in a vacuum, in a design studio far away from the action. Instead, the first IWC pilot's watches were based on the design inputs of Ernst Jakob Homberger's sons, who in 1919 became the owner of IWC. Both of these were certified pilots and knew from first-hand experience what was needed in a pilot's watch. It is no surprise then that the design they came up with had little in common with the Cartier Santos, the first pilot's watch launched in 1911. The Cartier looks as much like a purpose-built tool watch as a Mercedes resembles an excavator, whereas with the IWC the design follows function approach is apparent. These watches weren't jewels. More than anything else, they had to work. One son of IWC's owner even flew sorties for the Swiss Luftwaffe. With his Messerschmitt, Rudolf defended Switzerland against German bombers, which often showed little respect for Swiss airspace. While fighting a German warplane, Rudolf even was shot down and caught some serious injuries. In short, IWC has some serious authentic heritage when it comes to the genre of pilot's watches. But enough of this history lesson. Let's turn to the watch at hand or on the wrist. A cool feature of this watch, which is shared by all of IWC's current pilot's watches, is its ability to withstand a sudden change in pressure, as can occur when the plane is dragged down by a turbulence or has to engage in some fierce dogfighting. Besides this useless but romantic feature, several others have been retained, such as the soft iron inner case guarding against magnetic fields emanating from the plane's onboard instruments, the hack in seconds, as well as that iconic triangular index at 12 o'clock. Again, all of these are of limited use nowadays, but they point towards an exciting, evocative, awe-inducing past. They connect you to what has been. There's a bit of adventure then glancing back at you every time you take a look at your wrist. Let's quickly go over the specs of this particular watch. What I enjoy about this example are its smaller proportions. Its case only measures 39 millimeters in diameter, which is very restrained for a pilot's watch, particularly for an IWC pilot's watch. Just think of their 47 millimeter pilot, which barely fits a tree trunk, let alone a human-sized wrist. This one, in contrast, is supremely wearable and comes nowhere close to the edge of my wrist. It has to be said, though, that at 14.5 millimeter in height, it stands quite tall, increasing the likelihood of it bumping against tables, doorknobs, or indeed the armored glass inside the cockpit of your fighter jet. However, in my opinion, it would be a tragedy to keep this kind of a watch in a pristine condition. This watch has to be used. It has to accrue at least a little bit of damage to look cool. Locking it away and treating it as a safe queen would be like leaving your Porsche in your garage and letting it collect dust there, kind of a perversion. Suffice it to say, this particular example did not experience constant babysitting and is all the better looking for all the signs of use it proudly carries. Now, some might be underwhelmed by the fact that it houses a simple Valjoux 7750, a base movement nowhere near as sophisticated as the newer in-house IWC calibers. That, however, didn't bother me at all. Yes, the in-house movement features a superior power reserve and is clearly visually more appealing. However, the Valjoux is a mature, technically impeccable, time-tested movement. It is robust, reliable, and thus perfectly suited for this kind of watch, which, importantly, is kind of affordable, given the ludicrous watch prices, even during the current economic downturn. So all in all, consider me a fan of pilot chronographs in general and of this example in particular. It might not be the most spectacular achievement in watchmaking, but its shortcomings don't interfere with the romantic fantasy it manages to create, with the emotional impact this watch is having on me. In our often mundane everyday life, when sitting behind that desk, not so eagerly awaiting the next Zoom meeting, it is sometimes nice to glance at one's wrist and be transported, if just for a moment, to the cloudy skies, preparing to nosedive on that enemy intruder, or just enjoying the clouds passing by with the sun illuminating your cockpit. That is it for today. Don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed this video, and see you again soon.